the very employee who ought to feel grateful for being given the job seem to have this really perverse mindset, which is, I'm going to sabotage this job and the business. If I can't deprive it of its resources to my benefit, then I'm going to sabotage it so that both him and I languish in despair. A lot of people I know in Ghana have given up on the idea that during their lifetime, there'll be any transformation worthy of chatter. And then now it moves to our children. What about our children? Are they going to be experiencing the same apathy?
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Ronu Spirit Podcast, where you follow my learning journey as I explore potential ways to empower African nations, address the legacies of colonization, and enhance the global respect for Black and African people. My name is Hameed. Today, we don't have Dr. Sumaira Falha joining us, but my guest today is Richard Boateng, a dual national lawyer and entrepreneur that is born and bred in the UK with Ghanaian heritage. He practices law both in Ghana and over here in the UK as a bridge between the two countries. He's also a father, a brother, and a son, and a good friend of mine. Welcome to the podcast, Richard. It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I feel extremely honored, my brother.
Awesome. We're going to start in your dual national identity because you were just telling me that before we started recording. And that is interesting because you said the reason why it's important is because a lot of the things we're going to speak about on this podcast today is about perspective, and which, being dual national and being born and bred in the UK and having gone over to Ghana to start your law practice and work over there, you have a unique perspective. Let's try to expand and explore that a bit. Starting with being an entrepreneur in the UK and deciding you want to go to Ghana and do it there. Why?
Okay, no, that's a fairly good question. The irony, and again, another example of perspective. And I'll try and make most of my points by giving you a story.
Oh, I love that. I love stories. So let's do this.
My grandma died at age 96 in 2011, but I first moved back to Ghana in the 2004, 2005. It was sort of transition between 2004, 2005, and 2006.
Okay.
During which time I spent a lot of time going to Ghana. I did a conversion course, etc. Now, my grandma, who was acutely aware the lengths to which people in Ghana would go to secure a visa to go abroad, whether it be England, Canada, Europe, the US, etc. She was acutely aware of the lengths to which people would go.
Yeah.
And so when it finally dawned on her that I had done the total opposite of coming back to Ghana to set up a practice, she kept asking my mum and myself, are we sure there's nothing wrong with me? Right?
Yeah.
And she kept saying that till the day she died. She kept asking that question till the day she died. She just couldn't understand why anybody in their right mind would want to come back to Ghana. Now, and there's a lot of force in that because most of my indigenous brothers and sisters have taken the view Ghana is bereft of hope and therefore success is unattainable.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. It depends on how you look at it, right? We have become so accustomed, and this is purely my view, for handouts that we're not willing to create for ourselves.
You mean African nations?
I would like to say African nations, but of course I don't have the first-hand knowledge to say it's true of all.
Okay, so this is specific to Ghana.
Yeah, well, I've been to a few African countries, but I can say with certainty that it's definitely true of some of the Ghanaians I've come across or my interactions or knowledge of what I've seen in Ghana, right? Okay. And it's a bit of a dichotomy because a lot of people I know, and know that you too, have gone back home, whether it be Ghana or any place on the continent, started a business, and usually the beneficiaries didn't have a job before that entrepreneurial journey. And yet, when they've been given the opportunity, rather than grab it and try and grow and become bigger, better than what they were, they will sabotage what you've set up.
What do you mean? I don't understand. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I will. I'll do my level best to explain that. So imagine, if you will, I live in Ghana. I don't have a job, right?
Yeah.
I complain about my life, the fact that I've got no job, Ghana. And in fact, my mindset is I just need to get out of the country because there's no opportunities in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
So that's one side of the equation. And I will probably borrow to the hilt, maybe even lie, whatever, sell my soul to travel abroad. And then I may have been a doctor in Ghana, but I might become a menial member of staff when I get to abroad because I'm happy to clean or wash or menial stuff. But in my mind, that's entertainment. Okay, that's one. Two, those who aren't lucky to travel, or in some perspectives they will say lucky, but those who don't travel are still weathering because they don't have anything to do, they don't have any work. So people that have returned to the continent tend to come with big ideas, right? So they set up something. And of course, there's always this thing called local empowerment, right? So again, imagine it's me, I'm in Ghana as an indigent, you set up something and you give me a job, right? I ought to feel grateful to you, shouldn't I? Because you've given me an opportunity to now perhaps pursue a career where I can actually earn for myself, feel good about myself, and help you grow this business. And in fact, if I was one of the first few people that joined you, the reality would be you would trust me, repose more responsibility in me, and therefore we grow together. That would be a normal course of events. Would you agree?
Yeah, founding team members.
There you go. Unfortunately, majority of those who have had this experience tend to find that the very employee who ought to feel grateful for being given the job seem to have this really perverse mindset, which is, I'm going to sabotage this job and the business. If I can't fleece it, if I can't embezzle, if I can't deprive it of its resources to my benefit, then I'm going to sabotage it so that both him and I, or them and I, languish in despair. Now, if that's not a poverty mentality, I don't know what it is.
So the question I was going to ask to that, if others could say that this is a generalistic way of looking at things. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate and look at things from a different perspective and say that not everybody is like this. And what evidence do you have that this is how people act or behave? And I'm guessing this is the part where you share your story, because I'm guessing this is what happened to you, right?
Indeed. So you're right. And let me make it clear, of course, I've not met every Ghanaian, as popular as I may think I am. And I haven't spoken to, but I meet enough people to trade stories with where I've had a certain sense of this is not unique to me, right?
I see.
My example, I have a law firm in Ghana. It's been operating since 2007. We've had two clerks. The first clerk we sacked because he was stealing from us. I won't make too much fuss about that. It doesn't matter. He was replaced with another clerk who's been with us for at least 12 years, right? Now, this clerk, there was a point where the office changed our electrical meter, and it was changed because it was meant to make it cheaper. That changing the meter was meant to make our bills cheaper. What we discovered was it seemed to be exponentially higher. So we kept going back and forth with the ECG, demanding that they come and evaluate.
The ECG?
Electricity Company of Ghana.
Okay, cool.
Demanded that they change the meter a couple of times, went back and forth. We just couldn't understand why our bills had exponentially shot up, right? Until one day, maybe 5 years later, I'm driving home with my wife.
5 years later?
About 5 years later. I'm driving home with my wife at night, maybe just before 10 p.m.
Okay.
And as I drive past the office, my wife says to me, "Why is your office light on?" Now, let me pause and say this. Ordinarily, we have a member of security staff who lives on site in his own bungalow, right? So his premises has nothing to do with the office, although they're all in the same compound.
Okay.
I almost dismissed her query. I thought, oh, don't worry, there must be a reason. But I thought, no. Then I did a U-turn, went to the office, and I parked. We have a gate, so I parked outside the gate, whereas ordinarily I'd honk the horn, they'd open the gate, and in we drive, right?
Yeah.
Now, I parked, and I thought, you know what? Let me climb my own gate.
What?
Oh, yes. Yes. So I don't know what it was. I just suddenly decided, because I could see we have 4 offices, one conference room, and a very huge reception area. And the whole office was illuminated, right? Wow. Imagine like a stadium, right? So I was curious. I thought, you know what? Either someone's robbing us, because my security ought to be blowing up our phones and say, yo, what's going on? Or something untoward is happening. So at this point, it piqued my curiosity. So I jumped the gate. Now, having jumped the gate, I opened the door. And let me tell you this. The air conditioner, or we have air conditioners in each room, was blowing like a gust of wind, right? it was freezing. And anyone that knows me will tell you, I don't like the cold at the best of times.
Yeah.
So it was literally at full blast. When I walked through the reception, I could feel it. When I walked through the hallway, I could feel it. And our conference room. And so what we discovered was our security guard and our clerk, what has been happening over that 5-year period was when we leave the office for home, because my security guard has his own digs, him and our clerk have conspired to live within the office because that's where the air conditioning is. So they take a room each, blast the air conditioner. One stays in a conference room, one stays in one of the offices in the corner and enjoy themselves, right? Now,
So they were living in the office?
They were living in the office, basically.
Was there no AC in his bungalow?
I don't think there was, but even if there wasn't, there was enough room for the clerk to live in the bungalow if he so wished. It's an office for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And then it transpired that for 5 years, during the period we were complaining about our bills being exponentially high,
Yeah.
it was because we were spending more money during the night on air conditioning than we did during the day, when it's hot during the day. Yeah. And if I can conclude by saying this, neither our clerk nor our security has been able to discharge the indebtedness they created for us.
You mean pay it back?
Yeah, exactly. They haven't paid it back. They will never be able to pay it back. And they still expect us to pay them a wage. Now, ordinarily, that's another example of how you're depleting the resources of the very thing you're reliant on to sustain a living.
Yeah.
Right? It's what I call sheer bloody mindedness, as an example.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So they were doing this for 5 years. When you found out, surely that's a fireable offense, right?
100%. And therein lies the conundrum, right? Better the devil you know than the angel you don't. I started by saying our first clerk
was stealing money.
Was stealing, and he had access to each of our houses. And he was stealing from our houses, right?
Oh, wow.
More often than not, certainly in Ghana, more often than not, people are hired based on recommendations. So there's a nexus between the employee and the employer so you're hoping that gives you an advantage. And to be fair, our clerk, no one's perfect, right? We were able to source from a pool which is untainted. Maybe we would have sacked him, but we did discuss it. We weighed out the pros and cons and we figured he knows we know what he's been doing, right? He also knows the work well enough to discharge it. And I'll be honest, he's not exceptional. He's been with us 12 years. If he had aspirations, he could have become a lawyer himself. And any one of us would have collectively helped him to become a lawyer. That would have been, and I've spoken to him about this on many occasions, but it's certainly not something it's almost like a chore to even have him think about. Yeah, that's another example. So in short, better the devil you know than the angel you don't. We decided, well, at least to a large degree, he knows we know, and he knows now eyes are on him. And because we didn't want to be set back with the 12 years to then train somebody else, it's a difficult balance. But obviously, yeah, it's a tough one.
Oh, wow.
That's a real dilemma.
So this is what it's like running businesses. And you're right. I don't think this story is unique to you. I don't even think it's unique to Ghana. I've heard people that are trying to set up businesses in Nigeria and they have to deal with people that have just robbed them blind. Like, it's okay. So I know you robbed me, so don't do it again, right? You just have to deal with the situation that you're in order to make it work. I think it all goes back to corruption, right? This is corruption on different levels. And it's just like, if you're going to operate in these countries, you have to operate within the systems, which is you have to deal with some corruption and accept that you will get scammed or you will get robbed in some way at some point.
Yeah, I can give you 2 more examples, but I'll make it short this time. To convert the office into what it is now, let's say the contract to do that conversion was given to somebody who was very close to one of my partners, right? And so we spoke with them and they laid out, and they even gave us a contract for works. And at that time, there were 4 of us. The oldest was one of my partner's dad. He was senior by many a year. So ostensibly, the 3 of us, the young ones, were up running the show. The father was as an overseer. He was overseeing things for us. And we agreed. He said he could get the work done. We were impressed with the way he started the conversion.
Who is this? The contractor that you hired?
The contractor, yeah.
Yeah.
This is before the firm was operational. Before that, we were operating through the boot of our car, right?
Okay.
So the way he was working, we were so impressed. We said, look, we're going to travel. This is in June of 06, right? We're going to travel. when we're going to come back in September, he says by that time he'll have everything done. Everything will be crisp. Yeah, you know what's coming next. I haven't seen him since.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
I kid you not. He took the money and he left things just the way they were the minute we left. Out of sight, out of mind, off he went. Now, you can call it stupid because maybe we were being stupid, naive, a whole host of things. And I remember our senior Oxters, how could lawyers of any value, of any worth, leave themselves so exposed? It was a rude awakening.
But like, isn't that his business? I don't understand. Isn't that short-term thinking? This is Accra that we're talking about, right? This is Accra that this is happening in. Surely he won't be able to do business again in that. I don't get it. Isn't there a way to... Doesn't that damage his reputation? Or is it just that he expects that you guys won't tell anyone?
Oh, no, we told lots of people, like I'm telling you now. I know that people that listen to this will hear it as well. But I just don't think they care. There was a time when being outed in Ghana or in communities like Ghana was enough to discourage you from doing something as egregious as this, right? But these days, it's like it's a badge of honor, or they don't care because they've got what they want. And so I've never had the opportunity to sit down with him and ask him, what were you thinking? But you're right. We never saw him again. As far as I'm aware, he was never working in Accra ever again. In fact, I heard he took the money, went to the village, and lived like a king until the money ran out. Short-term thinking, perhaps.
And then what?
Exactly. And then what?
This reminds me of a story that a friend of mine told me. In Nigeria, he was investing in some properties, off-plan properties. This is properties that are going to be built, that are currently being built. And it was once again through a connection, through someone he knew, like a cousin, brother-in-law or something. So it was like, oh, we can't get scammed. This is, they invested a lot of money into it. And people saw that, the houses were being built. So things are going good, only to find out later that the guy had scammed tons of people out of millions. And what he was doing, he would build a few, but then instead of handing them over to the people that were supposed to get it, it would keep them and be like, oh, they still need a little bit tweaking here and there. Then it would sell those same ones that he had almost finished to other people. And now he's been arrested and is in jail. But it's like, what's it going to do? Like, he spent all the money. Like, the money is nowhere to be seen. And it's just like, there's nothing you can do to me.
Exactly. In fact, just on this topic alone, I could talk to you all day. I've got another example. And one of the things that's prevalent in Ghana, most in our courts in Ghana, all the matters in courts in Ghana, I'd say 70% relate to land disputes.
And the funny thing is, my friend that got scammed, he's also a lawyer.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody's exempt.
So he was sending messages like, I'll take you to court, I'll do this. The guy's like, I'm already arrested. What else can you do?
What can you do? I don't care anymore. Exactly.
Oh, God. Okay, one more example, then I have to ask you the main question that has been on my mind since you started telling me about all of this.
No problem at all. I was just going to say that 70% of the cases in Ghana, in our courts, relate to some form of land dispute, right? So to echo what you just told me, we represented a hotel that was being built. The owner, as part of that hotel, wanted to create a dry cleaners, right? And they come across someone that was selling a piece of land in a prime neighborhood. And so they naturally informed us, but that information came with an SOS. We needed to get it done ASAP. Now, due diligence is the order of the day when anybody, and if anyone's listening, is going to think about buying land in Ghana, triple DD, triple due diligence, right?
Okay.
Especially when it looks too good to be true. So imagine our client saying to us, I want this, because she's obviously excited. It's a steal. It's a great deal. She wants to get it over and done with before somebody else usurps her. And we say to her, please, allow us to do our thing. She actually wanted to give the guy the money straight away. And we said, no.
Whoa.
So in fact, there was a degree of conflict between her and us. Suffice to say, about 4 days later, she agreed reluctantly. She'd given us money to give to the guy, let's say a quarter of the price. We'd given it to him, and she wanted to get this wrapped up within a week, 2 weeks the most. And we said, just let us do our thing. The fourth day, as I am walking, I'm getting out of the car to meet with her and my partners, I get a call. The person says to me, look at a particular newspaper, the front page. On that front page is this guy plastered all over the picture with the headline, Syndicate dupes another person. And what they've been doing, they've been identifying land that belongs to foreign owners, are working in cahoots with people like the Lands Commission to create or duplicate documentation to demonstrate genuineness, and then selling it at such a steal to unsuspecting buyers get the money, and off they go.
So they were working
So
with
by,
the Land Commission. That's a
yeah,
governmental organization.
exactly. And by the time he was depicted in the newspaper, 17 people had been duped. Actually, I think our client was poised to be the 17th.
God, wow.
Yeah. Hey, there's multitude of stories. Like you
Let's
said.
not go on, because
Yes.
this leads me to the main question.
Okay.
If things are this crazy in Ghana, in Africa in general, why? Why did you decide to stop what you're doing in the UK, go to Ghana and set up a law firm? And why is your law firm still running there if all of this wahala is happening, basically?
There is wahala, of course, of that there's no doubt. So a couple of things. It is no coincidence, I think, that perhaps people who are less blessed than I am, who happen to be non-Ghanaian, white, Syrian, Lebanese, tend to be very successful, even Chinese, very successful in Ghana, right? So in spite of the chaos, in spite of the issues I've alluded to, there is opportunity. So it's about perspective.
Explain that. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And I have to say, for the most part, I don't take a great deal of joy in highlighting the ills of Ghana or places like Ghana, because I think it's a well-trodden path. A lot of people do that. It's easy to do. So this is an opportunity for me to demonstrate, at least try and show the other side of the coin. For all the ills that exist in Ghana, there are massive opportunities, right? For example, just the way I think, just the way my partners think, distinguishes us from most of our peers in law in Ghana, right? An example, if you and I had a dispute, okay? And let's imagine for this discussion, we represent two different people, so we're both lawyers, okay? And my case was stronger than yours, let's say for argument's sake. And I said to you, Hameed, why don't we sit down, discuss how we can resolve this issue rather than spend 4 or 5 years in court? Perhaps we don't know the outcome. It could be frustrating, but it's going to be a lot of money, and the only beneficiary is going to be you and I. So let's try and cut to the chase and resolve it. The predominant mindset in Ghana is, because I have reached out to you, in spite of the merits of my case, you would perceive that I'm weak and therefore my case is weak, and therefore you will try and bend me over.
I see.
Do you see?
Yeah, but how's that a good thing?
It's not a good. I'm coming to it. That's the prevalent, my view, prevalent perception amongst most of my brethren in Ghana, right?
Okay.
So because of that, we've taken a different approach. And so because we're able to provide a service with a different approach, a different perspective, we capitalize. Because don't forget, business people, wherever they are in the world,
They
have
don't want to
one
go
thing
to
in
court.
mind. Exactly. They don't want to go to court. Time is money. They don't want to waste their time, especially when we have a system that means an issue as simple as, do you owe me money or not, could last 5 years.
Whoa.
Do you see what I'm saying? And by the time you've got satisfaction, you're not even, it's a hollow victory because it's so far down the line, you may not even be dead. You may not even be alive.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no, justice is meant to be speedy. In our law books, it makes the point. Rule 1 says expedition. The case must be prosecuted expeditiously, and yet we do anything but. So anyway, I say all that to say this. Because of those issues, when we approach our clients, we do a number of things. We're able to immerse ourselves, if they're a company or if they're a business, in their business so that we can be preemptive rather than reactive. And I remember telling you that there is no glass ceiling in Ghana.
And in the UK.
In the UK, right? And so the prospects of me kind of scaling the heights is a lot higher in Ghana than perhaps it is here. I'm not saying it can't happen here. Of course it can. But I think balance of probabilities is probably more likely in Ghana than it is here. Whereas here, the system works. It's very organized, and you definitely can tick over, sustain yourself, maybe even have an above average lifestyle. But to have a life-changing transformation, it probably is going to be in Ghana. So for all the risks, for all the ills, the fact that there's no safety net, we feel it's a great opportunity to embark on. And lastly, the other thing that gives us an advantage is there are people, I'm sure you know this as well, in Ghana who have issues in the UK and vice versa. And so if we can become the bridge to provide them with that access point, for example, someone dies, they need a estate. In fact, I've got a case right now where a father has died in Ghana, had some assets here. They can't get here. They need someone to explore what it is, how it is, so that they can repatriate the money back to them in the UK. And of course, they say that when you can provide a solution to a problem, you're onto something.
Yeah.
So we identify the problems and we turn it around to see how we can provide solutions.
I'm interested in one thing. You said with the perspective of Ghanaian lawyers, they just see it as if you're coming to me that you want to come to the table and you want to negotiate, I mean, you're weak. So I'm going to try to bend you over. How do you capitalize that and use that to your advantage? That's what I don't understand how, because if you go to your clients and you say, we are not trying to waste your time in court. We are expeditious. We will make your cases go very quickly. We'll save you money. We'll save you time. But then every time you interact with another Ghanaian lawyer, they're like, oh, you're coming to me. I'm going to try to bend you over. Do you just allow them to do it?
Absolutely
How
not.
do you still speed it up whilst winning the case?
I've been a firm believer in the following philosophy. There are no such thing as mistakes. It's just experiences from which we learn. The question is, are we learning? And with those experiences, hopefully, as you're learning, you're developing and therefore you're becoming a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday.
Yeah, agreed.
The first time and let me be straight, I'm not saying this is true of all Ghanaian lawyers, because I've not dealt with all Ghanaian lawyers. Some of whom I've dealt with and some of the feedback I've got reflects this philosophy, right?
Yeah.
So my experience of that was, it was a rude awakening the first time it happened. May I give you an example?
Yeah, sure. I like examples.
Very good. We had a client who hailed from the States. It may have been Maryland or the tri-state, the tri-state, right? DC, Maryland, or Virginia, right? And she came to Ghana because her husband had left part of the plan, gone to Ghana, intending to set up, and then when the dust is settled, she was going to join him. 2.5 years later, he's still in Ghana. She doesn't hear from him. She now discovers
What, her husband? She doesn't hear from her husband at all. Like he goes cold turkey, silent.
He radio silent, right?
Okay.
She then discovers he secured a job with a bank as a risk manager. He's opened an account in her name. He's taken out a few loans in her name with Wells Fargo in America.
What?
So she's only becoming aware of it because now they're sending her demand letters, right? He bought a car in her name, which he exported to Ghana. Okay. So she's coming to us. She wants a divorce, recoup as much of the money as she can, and basically take him to task. Now, as far as we were concerned, this was a foregone conclusion. It was like you either did it or you didn't. There's no in between. Agree?
Yeah.
And we've got documentation that demonstrates
that you did it.
Right. So we reach out, to the guy, and he throws it back in our face. We said, fine, please put us in contact with your lawyer. And the lawyer, when we say to the lawyer, we don't take any pride in taking your client to task, right? Our client wants this, make it whole, we can finish it, the end of it, he can continue working. Remember, he's working in a bank as a director of risks or the risk manager, one of the two, right? The lawyer throws it back in our face because he feels we are weak and therefore wants to bend us over, okay? So now we turn up the heat.
But you have the evidence and everything.
I can't give you the why. I can only tell you what transpired. You can make of it what you will.
Okay,
maybe
cool.
I appreciate I'm not as smart as I sound or look. I know I'm a 3-year-old, so maybe it was evident to them. So, but here's what we did. As an example of how we turned it around, here's what we did. We made sure he got sacked from the bank. We sued the bank.
Oh.
Yes, for not having oversight because the guy had committed some element of fraud. And he's your head of risk and he's a fraudster. Hello? You see that? Right.
Yeah.
So we sued the bank, and also he'd opened an account in her name without her authority. In fact, the bank is no longer in existence today, but we sued the bank. We were able to get the money, most of the money back. We were also able to absolve her from any repayments because we redirected Wells Fargo to him. Now, and that's an example. I'm just giving you the short version. That's an example of how once we raised up the ante, his lawyer was overwhelmed, right? There's something about zealous advocacy, right?
What did you say?
Zealous advocacy. So you're very robust in your approach. But we always work on the basis that our initial approach is conciliatory. Let's sit down and resolve it. And sometimes they confuse that approach for weakness. Or I will say this, I've come across many of my peers who don't read their briefs. The main objective is to go into court and seek an adjournment. So that shortcut mentality seems to be prevalent in my view. And so it gives us an opportunity to kind of capitalize on that, if I can put it that way. One example, very good one.
Okay.
You imagine you borrow money from a bank.
Yeah.
To build your development or to do a development, right? The bank is taking you through hoops to give you that money that you are going to pay for. And you've indicated in the agreement that the payment will come from the proceeds of your development. You need the money as a matter of urgency to complete the project. Let's say we're in December now. Let's say the project must be completed by March. Okay. You have an agreement with an off-taker who's going to buy that project upon completion in March, but it must be completed in March. That's why you ask for the loan. They grant you the loan. You don't get the money until 7 months later. Meanwhile, you're still paying the interest on the loan.
What?
Thank you. You can't make it up. And then the bank had the cheek for when he's unable to pay to foreclose on his home, which was given as collateral for the loan.
But they didn't even give the money yet.
Now you're with me. So we sued the bank and won successfully. As we speak, they've appealed. They lost the trial 5 years later. They've lost the appeal. It's now going to the Supreme Court.
And they want to appeal that too.
They want to appeal that too. And of course, the longer it goes on, the more the interest keeps rolling over. But that's just an example of how some might call it absurd. Some might call it, maybe it's just desserts. I don't know. But I hope I've given you enough flavor to think about. It's a headache.
You really have. There was a thing you said that I wanted you to clarify just for the sake of our audience, in case they're not. You said most lawyers want to get to courts and seek an adjournment. What does that mean?
Okay. Remember I told you about rule 1 of our law, right? Our high court rules talks about expedition. We must prosecute our cases expeditiously. Okay. That means every time there's a hearing, you're supposed to progress the matter. Okay. Sometimes, through no one's fault, you just can't progress it for whatever reason because there are too many loose ends and they don't always come together at the same time. But some of my brethren and sistren, it's almost become an art form. Their sole mission when they're going to court, armed with a diary, only a diary, will go into court and tell the most incredulous stories, seeking that the matter be put over to another date without any constructive work being done on that day.
I see. So that's what an adjournment is, trying to just postpone the thing constantly.
To another day. Yeah, pretty much.
How does that help their client, their defendant?
I don't know how. No, to be fair, sometimes it is at the behest of their client. I've come to realize that our courts in Ghana are sometimes used as a way to a number of things. One, to frustrate people, bully people, or just kind of delay the inevitable. Gives them time to, hopefully, it will frustrate you to the point where you don't want to pursue it anymore.
Basically, you can maneuver the system.
Yeah, to contrast the two. In this country, if you issue proceedings and it's deemed to be devoid of merit, it won't go past stage 1. Or I should say, ordinarily, it won't go past stage 1. It will be kicked back and saying, this case is devoid of merit. Or if it gets past stage 1, the recipient can say, Judge, strike this case out because it doesn't have any merit. It doesn't show a cause of action. In other words, there are checks and balances. We don't have that in Ghana.
I see.
As an example, you owe me money, right? You don't pay me, I issue proceedings. You answer in your defense, yes, I owe you money, but I don't have the money just yet. How is that a defense?
Well, what do you want me to do?
Right, exactly, back then. And so you will get your money because obviously you put it on paper that you admit that you owe the money. But another example where negotiations would have been better, but no, spend money. It's a dichotomy.
I think this links to the problem of a lack of strong institutions that we face in many African countries, and we're addressing the judicial, I always struggle with that word, judicial system in Ghana. And how does that reflect across the rest of the country, like other parts of the governmental institutions? Like, because I assume that whatever corruption or maneuvering is being done in the courts can also be done outside of the courts in other parts of the government. What practical steps can be taken, do you think, to disrupt the cycle and change things?
It's a very good question, and I'm grateful to you for asking that question because you're right, we ought to focus on solutions. I think it starts with every man, woman, and child to have a vested interest in the outcome of how Ghana or countries like Ghana end up being, right? If there's this apathy towards the country, then we become strangers in our own country because we then let other countries dictate our philosophies, our way of life.
And that's what's happening right now in a lot of African countries, right? I feel like they're not dictating their own economic futures. We're not economically independent, basically. We're either reliant on the dollar rates or we're reliant on this. Yeah, that's like the normal standard. How do we fix that?
I have a very good friend who I must introduce you to, who I think I told you was once an independent candidate for president in 2008.
Oh, in Ghana?
Him and I talk a lot, and we always try and figure out if there's any solutions we can conceive of and maybe and roll it out. One of the things we talked about was when crypto was the business. In fact, crypto is still very much alive, but when it was at its pomp, we often wondered why any African government would not, instead of using the dollar as the benchmark of their commodities, translate that to crypto.
Well, I would say it's because crypto, a lot of them, apart from Bitcoin, a lot of them were just scams, pyramid schemes, fell over.
But that's because the creator of that scheme, but imagine if you, instead of tying your commodity to the dollar, you tied it to your currency, but it's a crypto form currency.
Oh, I see. Stable coin.
Yeah, call it Ghana coin or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, whenever you're selling, you're getting the money, which is, because don't forget, right now, our currency, Ghanaian currency, right, suffers whenever the dollar goes up.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday that Kawa was saying that just the Ukraine war affected the Ghanaian economy terribly. I would never would have guessed that.
Believe me, and I was in Ghana at the time, and it was, in fact, it gets to a point where I feel bad because the spike has a very significant impact on, as is always the case, people at the lower end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't affect those at the top because, of course, they can massage. To answer your question, that's one.
Sorry, before we move on, can you just explain for our listeners how the Ukraine war affected the Ghanaian economy? Because some people might not know that.
So, rightly or wrongly, most stocks are affected by world events, good or bad, right? Ghana is susceptible because it's highly dependent. In fact, although we don't use the dollar, most people trade in dollar.
In Ghana?
In Ghana. Right now, I think the Ghanaian dollar is about 18 to $1, something like that. Or maybe 16 to $1.
The Ghanaian currency is called Ghanaian dollar?
No. Cedi, the Ghanaian cedi, you'll get about 15, let's say 15 cedis to $1, $1, right?
And people trade in dollar, why instead of cedis? Because
the dollar holds its value, the cedi doesn't.
Okay.
So if I'm selling you something, I'd want to sell it to you in dollar, because even if you give me the dollar a month, a year later, it's still a dollar.
Still be, yeah.
Versus
cedis that go up and down. And if you can, why does the cedi go up and down very briefly?
Because it's not pegged against anything of value.
Okay.
So it's almost like it's in the wind, and if the wind blows, so does our currency, right? You think a country that like ours, that's blessed with a whole range of resources, would be in a position to peg our currency against our commodities, like so gold, that it's not susceptible, but it's not the case. Now, is it because I am smart? Absolutely not. There are people who are smarter than me that are in our government or were in our government that ought to know better to how we can secure our currency so that it's not susceptible to huge fluctuations, right? But it doesn't serve their interest to do that.
It doesn't serve their interest. That's a very good point. It doesn't serve their interest to make the cedis a stable currency and improve Ghana, even though they are Ghanaian and they run the country and this is what they represent. It doesn't serve their interest to make the country better. That's
my view, 100%. I think the prevailing view is, how can I benefit from this, me and mine, rather than how can we? There's no we mentality. There tends to be an I mentality, I and mine. And that's why Ghana to this day, because anyone that knows anything about Ghana will know that we are richly resourced. We now have oil, diamonds, bauxite, gold, etc. And yet we have the highest rates of poverty, homelessness, sick illness, people die very early. There's so much that demonstrates people have had operations under torchlights, and we have a dam. We can't guarantee electricity 24/7 in Ghana. water.
What you've just said now relates pretty well to what you said earlier when I was asking what steps could be taken.
Yes.
You said we need to get people to have a vision. What was it that you said?
I reiterate, I think the first step would be, and this is the easiest step, to educate people about the value of their vote. To date, in my view, most voters feel as though there's no value. So they are willing to sell it for tuppenny halfpence to whoever's willing to buy it, right? And even when they've exercised their vote, they don't appreciate they can hold the person they've elected accountable and make them responsible for the promises they've made. Okay. So the minute that enlightenment kicks in, suddenly the elected official can't act with impunity.
Yeah, but do they know how to hold these people responsible?
That's what I'm saying. So there needs to be a system of educating these people, the populace, about the value of the vote and what responsibility it comes with, and therefore how they can hold these people accountable.
Civic education.
Exactly. So once we do that, suddenly our elected officials will, to use an expression in Ghana, will be steady. They will know they can't just duck and dive and everything's hunky-dory, right? They can't just talk cack in Parliament and hope they get away with it. And again, I want to illustrate an example, if I may. I think it was when Tony Blair was in power, it must have been 2007, thereabouts. Jack Straw and Malcolm Rifkind were caught in a sting. And that sting was both of them had merely indicated, they were willing to use their position to gain money. So people wanted to meet somebody, they'll use their position as introduction, get introduction fee, that type of thing. They hadn't done it. They had indicated their willingness so to do. It became such a saga. Jack Straw resigned. Jack Straw was the Home Secretary at the time. He resigned. Okay? Can you imagine something like that happening in Ghana or countries like Ghana? They haven't even done it. That's how integrity is on a different level, right? They hadn't even done anything wrong. They just indicated there's a willingness to do that. In other words, I'm willing to bend the rules to achieve this. And they resigned. In Ghana, that would never happen because even when they've done it, they're going to double down. So if the populace have appreciated their vote, hold them accountable, then there's an outcry. When there's an outcry, it now puts more pressure on the individual who's flouted their responsibility, their rules, or not adhered to what they've promised. Then they start realizing that I can't act anyhow I want. I can't act with impunity. I am responsible to the people who elected me. Civic duty.
Civic education.
It's civic education. So that's one. There are many more we could do. Easiest one is charity begins at home.
Okay.
My view is a lot of our people are looking to somebody else to solve their problems, even in their immediate environment.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I call it learned helplessness.
Exactly. Thank you. I couldn't put it better. That's why you're smarter than me. I couldn't put it better. 100%. I mean, people would defecate and pee in their own domain and then complain how smelly it is. You know what I mean? So there's got to be this sense of, it's called what's the word? Self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't believe in the value of what you've got and therefore protect it, enhance it, and grow it, then you're only going to sabotage it. You're only going to demean it. You're only going to undermine it. And so those are some of the basic, and it will cost us nothing, just to inspire our people to appreciate what they have, what they are, where they come from, who they put in power. I don't even know if there's an actual debate amongst the populace, the voters, as to why Mr. X or Mrs. Y has been voted in. I just feel they just do it. We just had an election December 7th. Prior to that, I'm told some would go to a neighborhood and offer food in the hope that would get votes. Some would offer money in the hope that would get votes, as opposed to having a discussion in a town hall. We don't have a town hall, but something like a town hall where you're discussing what you can do for the community, how you can improve the community. Zero.
I see. I wanted to thank you for this, by the way. I wanted to go back and address a few things because when you were saying some of these things, it was triggering points in my mind, but I didn't want to interrupt. Oh, I don't think we ever got to explain properly why the Ukraine war was affecting Ghana.
Oh, yes.
But I think it was mostly to do with the fact that the oil prices went up because Russia is such a huge supplier of oil.
Oh, absolutely.
And when the oil prices go up, the dollar goes up. And because Ghana is so reliant on the dollar, that meant everything went up in price.
Yeah. Because our buying power decreases.
Yes. People that would usually buy bread or egg for a particular price, everything went up 4 times the price, including the breads and the eggs and all of that, because
Absolutely.
the dollar's gone up. Yeah, the dollar rate went up and the cities can't keep up with it, I guess.
Yeah. Remember I said to you, if you give me $1 today or a year later, it's still $1,
Yeah.
right? If you give me 10 cities today, what it can buy today is not what it can buy tomorrow. Or what it bought yesterday can't buy today because it's
Okay.
devalued. That's the susceptibility of our currency.
And that's why the war affected
Affected
the
us.
Ghanaian
Yeah.
economy. And the other thing you said about civic education is something that I've actually had a conversation with another friend of mine about. And it's something that I also believe might be a good solution to this. Because when I speak to a lot of people and I'm trying to understand what we can do to take charge of our own destiny and change things and make Africa great again, I guess, it always comes down to a mindset shift. And I think that's related to the thing you said about the politicians when you said it's all about I instead of me. And then you also said the same thing when you were like, charity begins at home. And also when you said the people need to look inwards and have a vision, like a communal vision. All of that relates to a mindset shift. And that's something that I've been thinking about how to achieve. And it always comes down to education for me. I mean, that's partly why I'm doing this podcast, because I'm trying to spread that education so that we can achieve this mindset shift. But I'm also, separate from doing this podcast, I'm also working on an educational platform that hopefully will be the platform to be able to share about the civic education matters in a very easy to understand way that everybody can really get. That's just one of the things that I'm working on that triggered my mind when you mentioned it. So yeah, I just wanted to share that as well.
No, thank you. And that's why you're such an inspiration. And long may that continue. For what it's worth, if there's anything I can do to assist, do not hesitate to let me know, because like you, I feel there are so many of us out there that collectively we can perhaps make some small indent in this journey in the hope of transforming the mindset. Because you don't know what you don't know. And I'll accept that. And you may have heard me say this to you, that I genuinely believe that Ghanaians are resistant to change.
Well, go on.
Because, okay, so it is not uncommon when somebody is trying to introduce something new, the resistance is leave it the way it is. It's not broken. Why change it? Right. But meanwhile, your environment hasn't changed or your existence hasn't improved. Right. And so just because you've got to learn something new, I've got a perfect example. A mechanic I've used since 2004, 5, 6. Lovely guy. Right. But as you know, with every passing year, the car, the way it's made, requires a different set of skills.
It becomes more electrical.
Very good. Today, most cars require computer skills because you kind of log on to the computer on the car to identify what's wrong with it. So it gives you a self-diagnosis of some description, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that if you're not A, with how A, your reading machine works, and B, how to understand, because it may not give you English, it may have symbols and whatnot, right? Now, this mechanic is actually an auto electrician. Lovely guy, got married 2.5 years ago. And I said to him, look, you need to start thinking about where you are. And if you want to keep working in this line, what you should be doing, because the future, of course, a lot of us don't think about the future. Well, the
Which
here and
we
now.
should, because we are the future.
Exactly. So I said to him, think about the future, do what you need to do to make sure you're equipped, because there'll come a point when the cars you're working on are no longer in existence, or maybe they're far and few between. Did he listen to me? Absolutely not. Now, his skill set is redundant. Why? Because he doesn't have the skills to deal with cars, most of which are now have got computers on board. Lovely guy.
My question is, what can we do? What can the African diaspora, those of us in the UK, what can we do to help to reshape the narrative, to drive the change that we want to see? Because you've mentioned a few things around change. You've mentioned mindset shift, you've mentioned education, and you mentioned stabilizing the currency. Those are the three main things that you identified. So yeah, how can we add to that?
Can I preface what I'm about to say with the following? I think it's right to say it's not fair for us living in diaspora to assume we know, and therefore when we say it should be adopted hook, line, and sinker. That's not
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And I think everybody would agree that would be, it's almost like me coming into your house and telling you how to live. That's not healthy. However, I also feel like with a brainstorming group, we should all be willing to accept no idea is a bad idea. let's just extrapolate the good ones that are workable and work with it, right? So there must be a healthy desire to engage with our brothers and sisters back home, okay? There must be a willingness to understand why they do what they do in the manner that they do it, and why we feel there's a better way to do it. And I'll use my grandmother as an example. I think I told you, she had a tendency to visit our village whenever she wanted, even though phones existed. She would not call, she would go. Sometimes she would come back and say, the person I went to see wasn't there, I came back. And we were like, why didn't you call? She said, that's the way I've always done it, I'm not going to change it. But for her, the jeopardy was hers and hers alone, right? In this instance, not willing to embrace the new, the how, the when, could be not only jeopardy for you, your children. Another example, some illiterates send their kids to school, right? And their kids need help. They won't pay for the help because they can't afford it. They can't help their children because they don't understand it. So the child is left frustrated. What happens? They leave school, right? So if we could set up like Kumon, we have Kumon centers here, right? Yeah, something like that. Or empower the teachers to give these schools extra lessons, maybe create a fund of some description. And believe me, some of these kids are very, very bright. They just don't have the opportunity. I've seen kids come from village schools, old, but so their mindset is childish. Maybe they've got life skills, but not educational skills. And I accept not everybody's an educationalist or an academic, but to marry the two and raise the level of our countries, and I mean, I'm saying this across the continent, raise the levels of our country such that they can make choices rather than just accept what's given to them. And I think that's key.
Okay, so those in the diaspora, we would need to contribute to this educational development in some way. If we can find a way to do this knowledge share with everyone on the continent, then we will be onto something.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. You've been doing this far longer than I have. I'm merely a mere cog in a very big wheel. In your engagements with other more renowned personalities, have you ever extrapolated from them how the shift, the mindset shift can happen? Because I say this, I tell you why I asked that. A lot of people I know in Ghana have given up on the idea that during their lifetime there'll be any transformation worthy of chatter. And then now it moves to our children. What about our children? Are they going to be experiencing the same apathy? And so I just wanted to know, have you heard anything from those more eminent than myself?
I would say the only thing that I've heard is to start young. And this is also why I'm in EdTech in general, because I feel like education is the key for uplifting Africa. And we have the youngest population. We're going to have a quarter of the world's population by, I think, 2050 or something like that. With regards to how this mindset shift can happen, what I've extrapolated from people that I've spoken to is usually to start young. But as to how to make it happen, to be honest, the idea has mostly been from my perspective and looking at how I can use tech to achieve that. And that's really what I've been focusing on, how I can use technology to create something that is engaging, to create education that isn't just boring, but also engaging and fun, and basically revolutionize the continent.
You're right.
That's a very good question that you posed to me. I think I'm going to start asking everyone now. When everyone identifies a mindset shift, I'll be like, how do we do that? How can we achieve that?
At the end of the day, there's never going to be one definitive answer. It's going to be a series of things that needs to be done because we all react to things differently, right? But I generally feel as though self-worth, how we engender, how we inspire, how we convey.
Oh, yes, they do say that a lot. Our history, our identity is important and that we should know that. Take charge of our own stories. That is the beginning of the mindset shift. That's the foundation. And then from there, we start shifting.
Yeah. There's a book I read by a doctor called Dr. Creswellin. It says The Miseducation of the Negro. And it makes the point, and it's very disheartening, but it's so, so true. You don't have to put a man in shackles to control them once you control their brain.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm sad to say, most of our people on the continent are still shackled without physical shackles, right? So we need to do what we can to open their minds to believe when they see themselves in the mirror, they should be proud. Because quite frankly, the brain, I mean, it's alarming. And I'm sure you've come across this, where a doctor, an accountant would leave the homeland, go to a foreign country and do menial labor in the hope of earning more money and be demeaned.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And that reminds me of some of the things that in the 60s that Malcolm X was talking about.
Yeah.
Not given the opportunity. So if you can't get your opportunities in your own country, of course you go somewhere else and do that. And why don't we have opportunity to go? Because we have some of the biggest sick populations in our countries. So there must be the need for doctors. But then they're operating under torchlights. You know what I mean? Or their hospitals are ill-resourced. So it's got to happen collectively, but it's got to start with belief, appreciation of self. Back to what Julia said yesterday, gratitude.
Belief, appreciation of self, and gratitude. Yes. Thank you, Julia.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
before we wrap up, and I have one last question that I ask, which is
Sure.
about giving back to the community. But before I ask that, I just realized we didn't even touch on the work you do in the UK. So let's just try to touch on that very briefly. Can you tell me a little bit about the work that you do in the UK, especially around Black youths in the UK and how you're trying to help and change things?
In a nutshell, I hope to be, back to what Julia was saying, be an ambassador. I was a bit of a rebel when I was growing up. I actually got arrested, which is how I ended up being a lawyer. And it dawned on me that although I failed the attitude test, which is why I got arrested, it must be similar for most young Black men today. And so I hope, having used a very, I call it turning adversity into triumph, Tate, having turned a negative into a positive, I can inspire other youths that I come across into believing that they are worth more, they should invest more, and they should believe more.
It goes back to what you're saying that Ghana needs as well, belief in self.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the connection between the Black youths in the UK and I guess Africans globally is that self-belief and belief in self.
100%.
We need to increase that in general. I think that's the first step to this mindset shift. We just cracked it.
We did. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That is the first step to the mindset shift. The first step
100%.
for
Yes.
Africans globally is belief in self, belief in your self-worth,
Absolutely.
proud of who you are. That's the first step.
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty much it. I used to do self-development talks to the Black adolescent youth, right? Or I used to call them delinquent adolescent youths. And so I'd start the conversation with who wants to be rich? Everybody will raise their hand. Famous, powerful, they'll all raise their hand. And I'd raise a £5 note and say, who wants this? And everybody will raise their hand. I must have done it about 150 times. Can you tell me the number of times somebody walked up to me and took the £5 note?
0, obviously, because you didn't say, come get it. Oh, 3 times.
No, only 3 times. But it was illuminating because that was a great opening for me to say to them, guess what? Most of us aspire to, but don't do what's required to get it.
Okay.
And therein lies the point. We can talk all day, but unless we take action, it's taking us one step closer to the goal, we'll never attain it.
Amazing. This is really cool. I didn't even know you got arrested when you were younger. That's something that we didn't cover because we jumped straight to Ghana. We didn't even cover your upbringing and everything in the UK because you were born and bred here. You're a native British person with Ghanaian heritage. Because we talked about Ghana so much, people would think that you spent most of your life in Ghana, but you actually spent a lot of your life here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right now, you're out here trying to help the Black youths with regards to guiding them in the right path, giving talks. But then also, I think you said you were helping them on the law side as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, nothing formal. It's just in my work, I come across a lot of Black youths, and this is a sad one. I represented a 15-year-old boy who had allegedly stabbed his dad. Now, you know the phrase roadman.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Well, his dad's a roadman. Is it surprising that his son is mimicking what he sees?
No.
Right? It was sad because the father almost died. The father was acting in a very antisocial manner whenever he came to court, had fights with security staff. It was like, I'm talking about full-blown fights. So and his track record. And so you start to see, and I'm not criticizing him, I'm merely suggesting that apple and tree, there's a reason, right? How then do you impact this 15-year-old if his environment is bedeviled with what he sees? You mimic what you see, right?
Yeah.
So what I try to do when opportunity presents itself, tell the people my story as to, look, I'm nothing special. I got arrested. I know what it's like to be where you are. I've been there. But luckily for me, I was able to turn it around. There's hope for you, belief. So I try to instill in them, and it usually starts with, look, I know you're in trouble. My job is to try and either exonerate you or mitigate what you're exposed to, right? But I want you to think about, what if I had a wand, a magic wand, what would you want to do with your life? What are you good at? Most of them is sports, art, a whole range of things, but they've never thought about it because, again, this is one of the disadvantages I feel as a Black family group, we tend to lack. We're so busy trying to earn a crust that the family unit doesn't sit together to have dinner. Our Asian and white counterparts tend to do that. They understand what the children are going through, what they want to do, and they connect them. They use their, what my guy calls social capital, right? So in my own little way, that's what I try to do because I come across them a lot. And but just the other day, a particular client refused to allow anybody to represent them unless it was someone that looked like me because he was a Black child. At least now I'm beginning to see. I've even had clients say to me, "Are you sure you're a lawyer?" Because they don't believe in their mind that Black people can become lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you, sir, are an inspiration.
You're an inspiration, all the work you've been doing.
Yeah, no, but you are, because educating us about our history is the first foundational step for us to stand and walk tall. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Now I'm going to ask you the last question of giving practical advice to our listeners and so on before we wrap up, which is, if you could leave the listeners with 3 actionable steps to empower themselves or their communities, what would that be? This is going out to Africans globally because that's what I'm trying to reach.
Absolutely. Number 1 would be appreciate where you are, what you are. Don't bemoan it.
Don't bemoan it.
Don't bemoan it. In other words, don't complain about it. Be grateful for where you are, what you are, because you then have the opportunity, if you don't like it, to change it. See, being aware that you don't like what you've got is a huge seismic shift. A lot of people, remember we talked about it, unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know, right? So people are walking along oblivious to the fact that they don't like what they've got. So once you know where you are, be grateful for it, be grateful for who you are and what you are. And if you now realize you don't like what you've got, that's great. Then implement or identify your direction. Because if you don't know where you're going, no matter how hard you try, you will never get there. So appreciate where you are, what you are, identify your direction, your journey, what you want, then look on how you get
to
there.
achieve. Okay. Yeah. I was just going to recap it and break it down into the 4 steps. You said, first of all, be aware of where you are and what you're doing.
And appreciate that.
Yeah. Once you're aware, be grateful.
Yes.
After being grateful, set a direction of where you want to go.
Yes.
And then start taking steps to implement that.
Those are the 4 steps. But may I just end on the last one by saying this? I read a book by Darren Brown called Happy. It's a book that I would recommend to anybody, including your good self, sir. Okay. Because it demystifies some of the myths about this notion of the world as a catalog, just think it into being and you'll get it, right? Which creates a lot more frustration than it's worth. What I would like people to understand is this: your journey is your journey. It's not to be measured against anybody. It's not to be measured against the speed or otherwise. You must enjoy that journey, and it takes as long as it takes, as long as you are on that journey. What's important is that you are on the bike. You are on that road heading to that direction. It's not important how long it takes. It's not important how quickly it takes. It's important that you do it. And there's revel in the fact that you are doing it. So that's all I have to say.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, just a recap of everything we've learned from Richard today for the audience. The 4 steps, actionable steps to empower ourselves and our communities is to be aware of the state of either ourselves or our communities, to be grateful for the good things within the community or within ourselves, to then identify a direction of where we want our particular community to go. Keep in mind, this could be just your neighborhood, your school, your area, or just your group of friends. You just be 4 of you or something. Just, you can start small, you can start with yourself. And then once you've identified that direction, start taking actionable steps towards building that. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. So I'm happy about that. Another thing that Richard said that I think is actually quite important that we shouldn't forget about is another actionable step that we can do is to have dinner together as a family. So any loved ones you have around you, try to have dinner with your loved ones. Let's all try to do that thing where we eat together and not eat alone, and see how that impacts our communities. Thank you so much, Richard, for your time.
No, thank you, Hameed. Thank you very much for giving me an audience. It's a true pleasure to be associated with you. You are a true inspiration. You are a pioneer. Never ever forget that, and keep doing the good work that you're doing. Well done.
Thank you. See me coming through, talking about this Africans are funny, dude. Yo, why they gotta be so prideful? Everybody knows Africa is suicidal.